I thought it might be interesting to take a look at these couple of 303 style boxes side by side. The TD3 from Behringer and the Volca Nubass from KORG. The Nubass is now a bit cheaper than it was originally on release and can be bought for the same price as the Behringer. Here they both are, new in the UK for £129. And the Behringer TD3 is obviously a straight up clone of the 303, so in use it's effectively like going back in time to adorn a house with all the quirks of the original, except it's got additions like it's got USB and it's got MIDI. And that makes it much easier to incorporate into the studio than the original. And then we've got the KORG Volca Nubass, which is very much inspired by the 303 obviously, but it doesn't attempt to emulate it. It's got its own sound, which as the colour suggests, is a bit darker. It's got something of the night about it, and I haven't decided yet if it's Batman or if it's a vampire. But it stands in its own right as a dirty little acid box, with sounds that are much bigger than the size of the box would have you believe, as with the other Volcas. And before I go into the details, if you just want the highlights, the Volca is sonically a bit more flexible. The sounds are generated in the main oscillator using KORG's vacuum tube technology, and that's what this little bubble shows you. The TD3 uses transistors as in the original. The tubes are used for the main oscillator and for a saturation circuit in the sub-oscillator, so this has a sub-oscillator, which obviously the TD3 doesn't. It's also got a syncable LFO with 3 destinations, amp, pitch and cutoff. Plus it's got an attack phase on the filter envelope. Plus it's smaller, obviously, it's battery operated, which is quite cool, and sound wise it's got a darker overall tone, but the filter is much more resonant. Sonically, the TD3 is pretty much identical to the original 303, and there's a mod you can do to tune the cutoff a little bit lower so it's not quite as bright, that lots of people think bring it even closer to the original. You've just got to open the back up, 6 screws I think it is, and play with the filter calibration screw. It's something I might have a go at later if I feel like voiding my warranty. But compared to the KORG, it's got much more flexible song mode. You've got 7 different songs you can program in, using sort of any combination of patterns. Plus it's got 4 banks of 16 patterns, whereas this has only got 1 bank of 16. But this is, as I say, much more of a replica of the original than the KORG is, and I find, as pretty much everyone else does, the sequences are right pain, and I think it's no wonder Acid House had repetitive phrases throughout the whole track. Once you've got something sounding good on the 303, you don't want to start again, or try putting a few together in song mode. Forget that, it sounds good. Don't change the notes, just tweak it till tweak it to death. And thus was born house music. That's my theory anyway. So before we get into the sounds, the similarities in them are, they're both pretty much what you see is what you get from a patch point of view. There's no hidden functions or hidden things with any of the knobs on the TD3. It's just play and tweak. On the KORG you've got sort of hidden functions with the LFO, so these keys double up, so it's not quite what you see is what you get, but pretty much. So let's take a quick look at the oscillators. Obviously these aren't synths that you spend hours sort of sound designing with. All quite simple. They've both got a sawtooth and a square. Change from sawtooth and square here on the TD3. So there's a sawtooth. Let's just make sure the cutoff's up and everything else is down. So the waveform on that sawtooth doesn't look much like a sawtooth, does it? It's sort of rounded, and it sounds a bit more rounded than a standard sawtooth, doesn't it? And you'll notice the notes dying away as I play them. And that's because they've both got a fixed amplitude envelope. Let's try that over here. Let's put it into a sawtooth, so function and 1. So now that's not lit, so it's a sawtooth. Try it an octave higher. Bit quiet that because I've been playing with the distortion. Do it again. So has a little bit more of a sawtooth shape, but it sounds a little bit mellower, doesn't it? Oh, that's a lot louder, that one. And the tone of this is definitely darker, hence the colour. If you turn up the drive circuit, you can add a little bit of top to it. And you'll notice this one, the TD3's gone a little bit out of tune there. The tuning on the volca is absolutely spot on. Whereas on the TD3, it's a bit more like an old analog. This retunes itself if you don't touch it for 10 seconds, which is really handy. Press function and pitch, it will tune it to an exact semitone. So to get it to 0, semitone to perfect C. If I play the C. Bit weird, this starts on an A. And every other keyboard I got starts on a C, except for the Minimo, which is an F. So every time I'm playing, going from this keyboard to this keyboard, I'm getting really confused. But tuning aside, you can hear, if I take the drive circuit out, that's a lot darker. Let's go to the square then. Doesn't look much like a square on the oscilloscope, but sounds like one. And on the KORG, function and 1. Again, a lot darker sounding, isn't it? And it doesn't look like a square, does it? Because it looks sort of a pulse on about 70%. So they do sound different from the off. And again, with the volca, bringing in the drive circuit will add a little bit more top to it. But I'll look at the drive and the distortion in a bit more detail in a minute. So finally on the oscillators, not a lot to look at on these two, is there, from that perspective. We've got the sub on the volca, so let's just listen to that. And then you've got a saturation for it as well. Which is really nice. And you might be able to see in this bubble, let's see if I can zoom it in. You might be able to see, as I twist this knob, a little sort of green light lights up right in there, but I don't know if that's showing up on the camera or not. Maybe if I turn the light off. So no idea if you can see that or not, but it's the addition of the saturation. And as you add the level of the sub oscillator in it, those blue LEDs increase as well. Makes it sound so much better. So really nice, that, isn't it? Really sort of fat, juicy sound. Let's just listen to that with the sawtooth. Lovely. So from the oscillators, let's move on to the filters. Difficult to show this because the amplitude envelope drops as you play in them, but you'll see the differences pretty easily, I think. So back on a sawtooth. Let's just add some resonance. If we add full resonance, watch your ears. You'll notice, looking at the frequency analyzer, that it doesn't go above the fundamental frequency. And that's characteristic of a 303. If we try that on this though, whoops, let's take that sub oscillator off. There we go. It's a ladder filter in this. It's going into self-resonance. Really nice. Not like a TB303, but as I say, it's not trying to be a clone. It's based on it, inspired by it, I should say. Let's just try that again over here. So you're lasting a bit longer on this as well, isn't it? The amplitude, the envelope. Yeah, much longer. So for your definite 303 style filter, the TD3 is the one. If you want something with more resonance, the Volca's your man. Attempting to get the fundamental coming to zero, so the midpoint on those frequency analysis, it's quite difficult to get them matching, but so if I've got the Volca and I want it to sound a bit more like a TB303, what would I do? Turn the resonance down, perhaps? And if you turn the resonance down a little bit, you still can't get them to match. And interesting, looking at the frequency analysis on the TD3, you can hear that you can see the sort of cut-off changes slightly. It's got a slight attack to it. It sort of takes a while to drift to the right frequency. When I say to the right frequency, I mean the final frequency. Sort of moves down, doesn't it? Whereas the Volca's much more sort of in control. As I say, I don't know if that's a characteristic of 303s or just something with this one, but it sounds quite nice. So a little bit more brightness to that, and maybe a little bit more resonance. So different tones, different filters, different sounds. The TD3 is much more in line with the sort of transistor-based 303 with that sort of harsh. And the Volca is... I'd say the Volca's sort of more precise. It's got a slightly darker tone. The resonance is way off the charts compared to the TD3. So let's put some envelopes on those. Let's turn the cutoff down. Envelope on full, cutoff about halfway, resonance on full. Try the same here. Resonance on full, cutoff halfway, envelope on full. So the envelopes straight away on the KORG are a lot snappier. So on this, the decay's on around, I'd say about 10 o'clock. Let's try and tune it down again. Again, different tone completely. Much more resonance again on this one. Let's turn that resonance down a little bit. Let's try it on its maximum decay. Sort of sounds familiar, doesn't it? Maximum decay on the TD3. So the envelopes on the KORG are snappier and longer. So again, the KORG's sort of proving to everyone that it's not a clone. It's a modern day 303 from that perspective. And you've obviously noticed that I'm using the KORG micro key air to control a TD3. And that's because it's difficult to play the individual notes on the TD3 without going into record mode. There might be a way to do it, but I don't know. So if I go into a pattern that I don't care about losing, I can go into write mode and play, and then I can play the... But I keep on thinking I'm going to overwrite something that I want, so did I overwrite that? No. But still, easy just to use this. And it's much easier just to play the sounds with this keyboard than it is on the TD3. And yes, I do get the irony of using the KORG to demo the Behringer. I thought it was even more amusing on my KORG MS-20 versus Behringer K2, where I used the micro key to play the Behringer. It wasn't an intentional sort of gag, but it did make me laugh when I realised what I was doing. And this, just to go off topic for a minute, it's such a handy little thing. Its Bluetooth is a saviour because you can sort of use it around the studio on anything you like, and it's battery operated, so you can just wander around using it on different bits of kit completely wirelessly. Highly recommended if you just need the keys and no other controls. You just take this to whatever you're playing and you tweak the knobs. It's ideal for doing these videos and for using on little desktop units. Anyway, back from the sales pitch for the micro key. So we've looked at the oscillators, the filters, the envelopes, and now maybe let's take a look at the distortion circuits. So keep them both on a sawtooth, and I've programmed in a pattern that's just 2 notes. Let's just see if I can find it. I'm on it. And I'll show you the sequences briefly in a second. But I've got the same on here. I programmed that to have a little play with the oscillators and have a little play with the filters as well, because you can't hold the note on. It was getting really frustrating on both of them. But let's have a listen to the distortion. In fact, let's forget that. Let's go to my... You can hear the little buzz off the distortion coming on there when you click it in. Let's go to my my old acid favourite, which is Higher State of Consciousness. And I programmed this in when I did the demo for the TD3, and I just think the distortion sounds wonderful on this. Bit buzzy there, but it works so well with those really sort of resonant sounds, doesn't it? And I'm not sure if that's a ground hum or something I'm getting from that, but I don't recognise it from when I was last playing it. So maybe something I've plugged in somewhere when I'm plugging this into the laptop or something has caused a little ground loop, but I don't hear it without the distortion in. It's a killer, that, isn't it? It's great. And luckily I've programmed the same over here. And you'll notice I was tweaking with the volume there. The volume's now on about 50% after bringing the drive in full. It's also got a tone knob here. It's not part of the distortion circuit like it is on the TD3, but it's here to... Try this again over here. So that's the real emulation, isn't it? Whereas this is sort of different. It's darker. It's got more resonance. It's got a different feel to it. So let's bring in the sub bass on this. Lovely, thick and rich, isn't it? But a completely different sound to your 303. Or I should say to a 303 emulation. I've mentioned the sequencer a few times now, so let's just show how simple it is to make something on the KORG and then try and do the same thing on the TD3. So function, step record. Here we go. Let's play that. And then to add some slides, just go into slide mode and just stick them on where you want them. Add an accent. So it's really easy to see where you've got the slides, your accents, and you can just turn them on and off at will. And then transpose, you can only transpose up actually, not down. So you can use this pitch knob here to transpose the whole thing down and then transpose up 1 octave or 2 octaves. But let's just put some in, shall we? Transpose, I don't know, 1, 5, 9 and 13, bit like a kick drum. And what I've done there, if you just hold it and it flashes, you go up 2 octaves. So start getting really interesting stuff really easily, and you can see what you're doing. And the other little trick it's got up its sleeves, which is pretty cool, is motion control. So function and 10, motion records on. So if I press play and we'll practice something. Now record it. Really, really simple. So let's try and do, I'm not going to try and go as complex as that. We can't go as complex as that on this because it'd take me ages. But let's just go into program 2, go into write, clear. If we play it, clear 2. Oh, there we go. There we go, that's cleared. So let's input the same pattern. And then we go into time mode and we tell we want 16. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we'll have them in there. So to put slides in, you go back into pitch mode and you go, there's one, put one on that one, on there, on the next one. There you go, and that's where the slides are now. Oh, come out of pitch mode, normal mode. So it's easy enough to do, but if you want to edit it, you're sort of buggered. You've got to go through one at a time. And let's try that with the accents as well. So pitch mode. So put a few in there. Let's see what it sounds like. Once you get used to using it, I've been giving it a really hard time, but once you get used to using it, you can see if you've got an accent or a slide as you go. So let's try and take those slides off. Oh, finished, have I? Ah, missed the last one, but we should have all but one of those slides gone now. Funny, isn't it? Even with just a scale like that, you start sort of wanting to just play with it and mess about. So yeah, once you get used to this, it's not as difficult as I keep on saying it is. But the KORG's just more intuitive. And finally, one thing I've not mentioned on this so far is the LFO. So let's just take everything off this. Let's just slow it down a bit and put an LFO on. Got the LFO on the amplitude, so we put it onto the cutoff as well. So function cutoff. And we press function and these two here for the intensity and the rate. So let's 10. And you've got a triangle or you've got a square, so we'll just put it on the square just to show. And it's also got an LFO sync, and what it does is it syncs the start of the LFO with a key press. So let's put that on. So you can get all sort of weird goodness on the volca that you can't get on the TD3 as well. So in conclusion, I thought it'd be quite interesting to see the difference between these two. They're both the same price. They are different animals. This isn't a 303 clone, but the TD3 is. They're both really hands-on and really fun to use. If you want something that really does emulate the experience of a 303, the TD3 is the one for you. But the KORG, it's smaller, it's battery operated, it's got a really nice tone, I think. It is its own animal. The sequencer is more basic for writing tracks, but much more simple to use if you're just using simple patterns, like I tend to do, and like I think most people do. I don't know anyone that's written a track and programmed in a whole song on a 303. Maybe they have, but I'm not aware of anyone that has. Taking nothing away from the TD3. I think it's a great little thing. Love it. You know, watch my video on it. I think it's lovely. I think it's really good fun, and I think it's a great little 303 emulation for £129. But the volcas are great little instruments. They sound really big, really fat. They're tiny little things, but definitely not a toy. So I hope that was of some use to somebody somewhere. And if it was, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and maybe even visit my Patreon page, support the channel there. And I'll see you next time.